Yes. All right. Well, good morning. I can't see you, but you can see me. So this morning, what I want to focus on for all our sakes and the sake of our life is something that we hear about this word all the time: metaphysics. Metaphysics. What the heck is metaphysics? Well, I first have an important question to ask you. Do you think that it is significantly important to understand how something works? Let's take your car. Is it important to understand how it works? What about a vacuum cleaner? Might need to understand how that works to keep your house clean. A mixer, binoculars. I mean, something as simple as binoculars. What if you turn them the wrong way? You're not getting to see what you want to see. For me, I have to understand how my cameras work. I don't need to know everything about it, like right down to every screw or how the shutter works or anything like that. But I need to know basically how whatever it is operates so that I can put it to the greatest use. That's the key that we're focusing on today. Wikipedia, okay, that has become like the key source now. Wikipedia tells us about metaphysics. This is what Wikipedia has to say. It's a branch of philosophy that examines the fundamental nature of reality, including the relationship between mind and matter, between substance and attribute, and between potentiality and actuality. I love that. Okay, Wiki got it right on this. The word metaphysics comes from two Greek words that together literally mean after or behind or among the study of the natural, like nature, that which is natural. And Wiki says that it's been suggested that the term might have been coined from a first century CE editor who assembled various small sections of Aristotle's works in a treatise that is known as Metaphysics. Isn't that interesting? So, the fundamental nature of reality. To understand what the fundamental nature of reality is and to understand spiritual law. When each of us understand those two things, we're understanding how life works. Not only our life, but all of life, and we can put it to its greatest use. So we start with the premise that we live in a spiritual universe. Everything about anything that is seen and unseen is part of and is a spiritual universe. The science of mind, our faith, our philosophy declares the truth about this spiritual universe. And Ernest Holmes tells us that it declares the truth about false belief, considering everything which is opposed to good as an accumulation of human thought, the collective negative suggestion of the human race. And so there are false beliefs that aren't aligning with things that are not good. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but it declares the truth that this spiritual universe is all that is in existence. So when each of us have a conscious knowledge of this, then it gives us conscious control with the laws of nature. And we get to work with the laws of nature instead of against the laws of nature. And as we know, if you've been in the science of mind at all, that we know that thought is a tool of mind. Sometimes it gets confusing or can be confusing of what is this thing about mind. We're not talking about my brain, but mind. So these right ideas enforce the law of mind, and that everything, look around your room right now, wherever you are, look around and just start looking at physical objects. Just start noticing the physical objects in your room as I'm talking. And these physical objects are fundamentally spiritual in nature. Everything that you are looking at is spiritual in nature. And this object, this objective fact, let's call it, whatever it is we're looking at, is but a symbol of the subjective or an invisible cause. So behind every object that you're looking at, there was something subjective to that coming about in its physical form. And physical science has caught up with a lot of this philosophy, again, dating back to Aristotle, and before this starting to catch up with and completely proving that the physical universe in which we live is like this gigantic thought more than anything else. Like everything is a gigantic thought. And so Ernest Holmes tells us that if the physical universe or the cosmos as a whole is more like a gigantic thought than anything else, then it follows that our immediate world, everything that we each experience in our life, is part of this thought. So we're dealing with the creative power of mind rather than the creative power of our own thinking. And that helps me a lot. Like that takes a lot of weight off of me. Like I don't have to do it all. I use my own thinking, but my own thinking utilizes this mind, this universal mind. There's only one mind. And I'm utilizing this mind principle, which creatively acts upon it. It does its thing. And so because it does, I tend to become what it is I think. And that's good at times and not so good. But there's a vast difference between saying I create. Now, yes, I do, because there's not two things happening, but because we all do create in a sense, but it's really this universal presence, God, the divine principle, whatever we choose to call it, that is creating. Let's take spring right now. And that is the fact that I don't create a tulip. I didn't create a tulip, but I planted the seed in my little patch in front of our condo. I planted the seed in the ground, which it created the tulip bulb, right? All I had to do is plant the bulb and it created. Pick anything else. I really like corn on the cob. I can plant the seed of the corn, but I don't have to create that ear of corn. And on one stalk, there's several ears of corn. Isn't that great? But I'm not creating it. And I don't need to know how it's created. I just need to know that when I plant that seed, in order to get the result or the experience that I want, by doing that, that corn must be produced. That tulip must come up, right? So we're surrounded by this beautiful creative intelligence everywhere present, and it is working all the time, everywhere that each of us are in this entire cosmos. And this creative intelligence is everywhere, and it receives the impress of my thought, the impress of your thought, the impress of all our thoughts, and it acts upon it. And this creative intelligence brings it into our experience. And it brings it into our experience, those thoughts that are conscious and also subconscious. So what does that mean? Well, we each have conscious thoughts. You're having conscious thoughts right now, listening to the sound of my voice, a response. You're repeating what I'm saying in your mind, or you're saying, wow, that's pretty interesting. Plant the tulip bulb, whatever. So it's like on the surface, we have conscious thoughts. I have a conscious thought of how I want my day to go. All of this. And these are the thoughts that I'm aware of. These are the thoughts that I directly focus on. These are the thoughts that like run, let's say, on the surface of things. But there are also subconscious thoughts, this deeper realm of mind. And that's where many of our patterns and habits are stored. And these things continue to repeat themselves. Have you ever noticed that? Over and over and over again. I've recently been having a whole series of dreams. They are repeating themselves over and over and over again because it's in my subconscious, my thoughts. And those two, that which is in my subconscious, those patterns are also being produced. So each one of us are in reality using the same mind. Ernest Holmes, when he talks about mind, likes to use a capital M. And all any of us are ever using is the same mind, this one mind. There's not two minds. Yes, we have independent thinking, and that's really a wonderful thing, because we are each these individualizations of the universe, of God, of spirit, this whole big thought, right? And each one of us are a little different. We are diverse in how we think. But again, there's still only one mind. Emerson said that there is one mind common to all individual men or people. So here's a great example that has helped me understand this at a little bit of a different level as I've been studying science mind. Let's say 100 of us decide to get together and we want to purchase 100 acres of land. We collectively do that. And then we collectively agree, the 100 of us, that we each get an acre to play with. It's like our plot. It's our patch. We get to play. And I have an acre, you have an acre, all these people that came together have this, each have an acre of land, right? We're going to make it a community garden project. And I'm going to plant my corn for sure, white sweet corn, and tulips or whatever. You get it? I'm going to plant what Karen wants to. You're going to plant what you want to. We're going to tend to each of our acres. We don't necessarily coordinate with each other. And then at some point, we notice and walk around these 100 acres that all these different things have cropped up. Oh my gosh, in my acre, there's all these things. In your acre, there's different things. And we walk around these 100 acres and it appears that we have individual acres of land. But the truth is, that's the furthest thing from the truth. We took an acre and we tended to it, but there's not 100 different kinds of creative processes in the soil, in these 100 acres. There's only one creative process. And there's only one kind of creative process in the universe at work, and it's common to each and every one of these 100 acres. However, again, we're each individualized people with different tastes and desires. So we're going to plant what we want on our acre, what you like, what I like, etc. But there's not these 100 different acres of land. And that's what most people tend to think. And that's what most people tend to focus on. And that's what most people tend to see, that these are all individual acres, but there's not. And this is exactly the way it is with my subjective mind and your subjective mind. And we tend to think it's my mind, right? Mine, like different. And there's no such thing. Psychologists call it your subjective mind, but each of these acres and their different kinds of plants are moving and having its expression under one principle and under one creative process, and not different processes. It just tends to be different ideas that produce different seeds that produce what we see on each of those acres. So that's why we get to have the life that we each have. Every person is a result of his or her thinking. And it's that thinking that is subject to this one creative process, this one principle that is taking place. And it passes into what we call my subjective mind, your subjective mind, but everything is really this universal creativity flowing through everything in each of our own individualized thinking. And this is one of the key principles of our philosophy. Both the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are the big M, mind. And we say that mind, the mind principle, which is universal, is individualized. We just heard there's only one life. That life is my life. And you and I do not have a mind separate from God. We have the mind of God, the mind of spirit, the mind of this universal presence. And that is the true foundation, the nature of reality as we believe in the science of mind. Einstein actually said as one of his last pronouncements, like one of the last things that he said in his life is that there is one law in nature, which is common to all laws. And so there is one law which dominates, governs, controls, synthesizes, unifies, coordinates every known law. And it is this one mind, and it is up to each of us to understand how this works, and it's up to each of us to use it. So again, there is a creative intelligence that does operate upon our thought, whether we know it or not. It does create the body, and it either makes it sick or it makes it well. It does control our circumstances, making our circumstances happy or unhappy. It can bring good into our lives if we conceive rightly, Ernest Holmes tells us, in cooperation with it. And it will and it must. And there isn't any question about this. It's been working this way our entire lives. We may not have truly understood how it works. We are using these laws of nature, and we may rely upon them. We may rely upon these principles. In fact, it's the one thing in our life that we can rely on, that is constant, that is consistent, that won't ever leave us in a moment's notice. And it's up to each of us to learn new ways to use them. I've read from this book recently, the Ernest Holmes paper. Many of you have started to read it and bought it. And I truly love this. And to say this in a different way, this is what Ernest Holmes says. I believe the power that makes us sick is the only power that can make us well. The power that impoverishes us is the only thing that can enrich us. If it were not so, the universe would be a dualism, and there would always be an evil contending against the good. and God is one. I am that I am, besides which there is none other. I believe in absolute unity. You and I are using the same mind, the same power. We wouldn't know each other if we weren't using the same mind, but we are individuals in it, and all of it is back of each of us. Just as you and I do not create the watermelon, but may so comply with nature, that one little seed will produce half a dozen watermelon, each with 1,000 seeds in it. There is a principle of multiplicity. So you and I, by conscious cooperation with the laws of mind, reacting to our thinking, can and will and must and do bring good or ill into our lives. When we know truly how this works and puts it into use, we each can expect seeming miracles. I love this song, this rendition from Amy Bishop. She's going to sing The Age of Miracles.
Hello, Dallas. My name is Amy Bishop, and I'm here singing to you from my kitchen in Calgary, Alberta. I'm going to sing a song by Mary Chapin Carpenter called Age of Miracles. Past comes upon you like smoke in the air. You can smell it and find yourself gone to a place where you live without worry or care. Isn't that where we all once came from? Green leaves and tall trees and stars overhead, and the sound of the world through the screen. Now you sleep with the covers pulled over your head, and you never remember to dream. Think you're just standing still. One day you'll get up that hill. In the age of miracles, there's one on the way. Greenland is melting, the west is on fire, but don't you ever stop praying for rain. It's a curious place between hope and desire. Different gods, but the prayer is the same. 1,000-year storms seem to form on the breeze, drowning all living things in their paths. When a tiny old town finds itself underneath, we're all once again trapped in the past. It seems we're just standing still. One day we'll get up that hill. In the age of miracles, there's one on the way. We can fly through the air with the greatest of ease. We can land in the dust of the moon. We can transform our lives with the tap of the keys. Still we can't shake this feeling of doom. But I woke to find monks pouring into the street, marching thousands strong into the rain. Well, if courage comes dressed in red robes and bare feet, I will never be fearful again. 'Cause if I'm just standing still, one day I'll get up that hill. In the age of miracles, there's one on the way. It seems we're just standing still. One day we'll ride up that hill. In the age of miracles, one on the way. There's one on the way. There's one on the way. There's one on the way.
Thank you, Amy Bishop. Yes, there are miracles on the way. Metaphysics, again, the truth about the nature of reality. And we do our best to share the truth. And the truth is there is absolutely the creative power of our own thought at work at all times. And we teach this beautiful spiritual technology in which we can demonstrate through spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer. And one of the things to note about this is, and it's a key thing that Ernest Holmes will talk about only in a few places. But he shares that it depends, the success of spiritual mind treatment depends entirely on us each knowing that we do not put anything in. We actually take out. He says, and I love this quote, all nature conspires to produce and manifest the freedom of the individual, that it may unloose its own energy. So I'm just going to stop and imagine this thing, this spiritual entity, whatever we choose to call it, this universal presence that all is that it is. It wants to unloose its own energy, not let it be contained. It just wants to unabashedly give to itself. And we have that freedom where we are that place where this energy is let loose. He says, we may be sure God is for us. This thing must act in accordance with definite law in the universe. And this law says that whenever and wherever there is an adequate subjective image which does not contradict the nature of the universe, that image will not only tend to take form, but will take form and will manifest. So I was with this. What does he mean by does not contradict the nature of the universe? Well, the nature of the universe is good. The nature of the universe, this principle of life, is for more life. That's the nature of the universe. So this principle of life cannot produce death without destroying itself. So if there's a will of God, or say the will of life itself, it has to be for more life. Everything then tends to be in alignment with this expansion and this multiplication, like the watermelon seeds, this multiplication in the divine plan. And everything that expresses life without harm or hurt is in alignment with the nature of the universe. So anything that enables us to express a greater life or happiness or joy or creativity, beauty, whatever it is, we can pull it out as long as it does no harm to anything or anyone. So anything within one's own self-expression or experiences at the expense of society or other individuals or other living things defeats the purpose of freedom. And that is each of our divine birthright. And because of all of this, back of everything is unity. It's only one thing. That's the way the nature of reality is. He also talked about in that quote, adequate subjective form. What is that? To have an adequate subjective form. When we have it, it must be produced. Well, we each, and only each of us can do this for ourselves or for the collective. We each must have a strong picture, like this mental concept, really strong, of what it is we desire. And we must hold that mental equivalent of what it is, regardless of the situations, circumstances that come about, until it is mirrored back. We must hold that. That means we cannot make affirmations for 15 minutes. And then for the rest of the day, for 23 hours and 45 minutes, deny the thing that we have affirmed and obtain the results that we seek. You understand what I'm saying? I have to constantly work at this. So we have to hold what it is we desire. And it's sort of like if we go back to this 100 acres in my acre, it's like I plant the corn and I plant the tulips and I plant what I want and they start to sprout. And then what do? I just start pulling them up. I negate it, I pull them up with the thoughts that are not like that. So every time if a thought does that, I must plant again, right there, and not let those negating thoughts continue to grow. When in this law of life, we mentally affirm and become at the same time inwardly aware. That inward awareness is that mental picture. What is it? What does it feel like? What emotion would that be? What does, all of my senses that I can have come alive. As I'm inwardly aware, this is here, this is here, this is here, I hold that mental picture, and then life produces it. I held a mental picture, maybe before I hit 20, I don't know, but certainly in my early 20s, I held a mental picture that I knew that one of the things that I came here to experience in this lifetime was to find my soulmate. And I held a mental picture of that. I really knew that that was one of the key things in my life, to find my soulmate. Perhaps I had one in other lives, but this one, find it. And I held that mental picture. I held that mental picture even while I was in relationships. And I just kept holding that mental picture. Now, that didn't come about until I was 49 in unexpected ways, but it came about because I held that mental picture inwardly. I knew what it was, and I'm so grateful. I held a mental picture of going to South Africa and to see the Big Five and all of this in Africa. A year ago, literally a year ago, I was to get on an airplane with a group of people from this community and do that sacred travel. And it was clear that we were not to go because of this pandemic, because we could go into harm's way and not get back. But I still hold that mental picture. That mental picture, supposedly we were going to go in November of 2020. Wasn't the right time. Keep holding the mental picture. Then it was like, well, we're going to go in March of 2021. Nope, we didn't go. I'm still holding that mental picture. Everything about it is I'm going to Africa with people that I know and love and experience this. And that will take place in November 2021. I'm not letting go of that mental picture, however long it takes for something to come about. And so this creative law it's like a mirror, and we're the one that's holding up the mirror, not in front of us, but inside of us. And as we do this consistently and constantly, no matter what happens outside, I did not let go of the mental picture of going to Africa when it didn't happen a year ago, when it didn't happen in November, when it didn't happen this month. Inward, inside of me, I see myself in the Jeeps with my camera, with the people. seeing the beauty that Africa has to offer and the people that we get to meet. I am still holding inside of me with faith and expectancy until the universe mirrors back. Trip to Africa. And it's the only thing that we get to control for ourselves is our thinking, our thoughts, our images, our all of this inside of us. I've recently been struck that I also held a mental image of having a child. And I had one, I had a son for a couple of years, and it was a really heartbreaking time. I actually almost didn't know that I would be able to live 5 more minutes in my life at that time. But I moved through that very, very, very dark time in my life. But I've still held a mental image of having a child in my life. And I sure didn't know how, especially once I passed 40 and got older. But I held this mental image of having a child in my life. And what do you know? The universe mirrored back through meeting my soulmate, who happens to have a son, who happens to have a daughter. And now I happen miraculously to have a granddaughter, to have this child in my life that I get to love and receive love and watch the beauty of this awe of life itself through Aurea. So whatever it is that you have mental images, wants, desires, experiences that you have a desire to experience in your life, hold tight, hold it tight, plant the seed in the soil of this creative process, which is the most powerful thing there ever is, ever shall be. And hold tight, don't let go, no matter what the situations, no matter what the circumstance. If something happens and it appears there's no way in the world that's ever going to happen, you don't know, because all of this is mind. This is a spiritual universe. This is a spiritual universe. Your thought is creative. And there is a creative process and a law that is at work all the time, everywhere present. The great news is you did not make this law. The great news is you only use it. Use it wisely.